So, morning, everybody, or good afternoon. We have a fantastic session lined up today. Um, we're going to hear from David May. David is a veteran master gardener with an absolutely stunning garden. In fact, our training class is going to make a tour of that because it's so functional and so great. As we know, a garden like that doesn't just happen by accident because it takes sharp, well-maintained tools as well as a sharp eye, of course. David's going to show us how to keep our gear in top-notch working order. And Gary is our retired WSU County Extension Director, and he has seen it all. He's going to share a wonderfully simple step-by-step method that'll make you feel like a pro instead of a nervous amateur. I don't know about you, but I've always found pruning fruit trees a bit intimidating, you know? You stand there with your pruners in hand, looking at the tree looks back at you, and you just think, now what? Where do I even start? Well, today we're going to take the guesswork out of it. So join me in welcoming a virtual hi to Gary and David. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And I will be putting in a link for the evaluation that we'd really appreciate you filling out because it tells us that what you liked about the presentation. And if you have any other suggestions of what we could offer you, that would be great too. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to David.
All right, everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, I'll try not to take up too much of Gary's time. The star of the show. So
Do you have a PowerPoint, David?
I don't have a PowerPoint.
Okay, that's okay.
No PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, so with pruning, kind of a big part of not just pruning, but really garden care is taking care of a couple of key tools. And usually we've got some snips and pruners and loppers and saws and those kind of thing. And for me, when I'm getting into pruning, really I do what research I can and find some videos where people prune the specific types of flowers or trees I'm looking at. Um, but I think main tools I use for pruning, and Gary might touch on a few more, is kind of the usual loppers here, and then some kind of hand pruners. Got two different. This one's more of a I don't know exactly the term on that one, and this is more of a this one's actually pretty old. I got this from my grandfather after he passed. And then the other thing I've started using on mostly on my fig trees when I'm pruning them is one of these. It's like a Japanese style pole saw. It's got a
Huh.
it's got a rougher cut on one side and a fine cut on the other. And found that a lot of the pruners, when you snip the branches, it will kind of break the ends a little bit, maybe split a little of the branch. And a lot of times that's fine, but sometimes, especially if you're pruning fig trees for propagation, you don't want to damage them too much especially on the cutting. So I'll pull those off with the pole saw. Now, the only problem on the pole saw is it's very difficult to sharpen yourself. So really, that's a fairly new pole saw, and I haven't had to sharpen it yet. But unless you have the tools for it, I would take it to a professional place to have sharpened. Excuse me. Um, Otherwise, I did want to show you a picture here real quick. Let me share my screen just for a second. Okay, you see that picture there?
Yes.
That
Yes.
is
Yes.
that little pruner that I showed you, the hand pruner from my grandpa. You can see how rusty that thing was. And let me stop sharing that now. See if I can figure that out. There we go. We'll go back to that. This is the same pruner. And there's a couple ways for catching the glare off the camera there. There's a couple ways for removing rust off of tools. I'm not going to get too much into depth on these. Um, there's two ways that work pretty well. If it's only a light rusting on there or some heavy dirt that you're having trouble get rid of, you can just make a mixture of water and baking soda and really you just want to make it into a paste. You don't want it to be so it falls right off when you put it on the tool. And you just apply that on there and let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes. And then after that's done, if it's if it's if it's a harder clean, you can get some of these wire brushes and scrub it with that. But a lot of the time, there are really two types of steel wool that I use. There's the number one steel wool. It's all blurred right now. And the double zero. The the double zero and the more zeros, I think they go up to like quadruple zero. Makes it more fine texture. Um, so usually I'll just take the number one or the rougher steel wool and scrub that baking soda water mixture off. And that does okay for light stuff. Um, if it's more rusty like that pruner that I showed you the picture of, you can make a mixture of white vinegar and salt. And it's a 16 to 1, so 16 parts white vinegar to 1 part salt. And you want to make enough that you can submerge the metal in. And for that tool, that was rusted enough that I let that sit in there for 24 hours and I checked it and scrubbed it with the steel wool and it still had some rust on it. So I let it sit for another 24 hours and scrubbed it again, and that was enough to get all of that rust off of there. And if you do that, you don't have to if you rinse it really well, but generally, from what I've seen other people recommend, take a fresh batch of water and actually put some baking soda in that. Not enough to make a paste, but just enough to kind of make a liquid that will counter uh, the chemical makeup of the pH level of the vinegar liquid. And that kind of neutralizes it. You let it soak in there for just a few minutes, so it won't continue harming the metal in any way. And then the other thing, just in general for cleaning your garden tools, the normal wipe down is fine. They have these, uh, some of these companies make these cleaning sprays. This is Barnell. Um, I know some of the other companies make them, and they're just it's a food grade non-solvent cleaner. That's good for normal cleaning. Even just wiping down with an oiled rag is good. And sometimes, especially at the end of the year, you want to do a more deep cleaning. And I've seen other people recommend scrubbing bubbles or simple green. Um, if you want something a little less harsh, I actually like using this stuff, which is, I was going to blur it out. It's the Dr. Bronner's Salsuds, Salsuds. It's a biodegradable organic cleaner. And um, yeah, so if you don't want to worry about washing chemicals into your yard and things like that, that's really good. So just mix that up and give your tools a good scrubbing and then rinse them off. And if they don't need any extra sharpening, I usually use some 3-in-1 oil. I also have, let go. This was also from a kit from Barnell. It's just another food grade lubricating oil. You can see it, it's kind of glared. But yeah, it's the Barnell B oil, they call it B-OIL. So then you lubricate your tools up. So the next part, with once you have your tool cleaned up, if it does need sharpening, pretty much any cutting tool that you've used throughout the year is going to need sharpening. And even some of the things like edging tools and sometimes your shovels can use some sharpening. So for the rougher sharpening that you need to do, um, actually, I'm going to move the camera for a second and show you some of these tools here. Let me turn off the background blurring. There we go. Um, Try and hold it so that's steady so I don't make people nauseous. These three tools over here, uh, this is just a flat mill file, and it came in a set with a round file and a half round file. Then there's these two different hand small hand sharpening tools. This one has a coarse side and a fine side. And this one is just same on both sides, but it's got a double edge. And then this one is a larger one that has a fine side, and the rounded side is a rough side. Now, blur that so you don't see all the rafters. Um, Now, on something like the big loppers or your hand tool, what you're going to want to do, um, this might be a good example. The back side of this is just a little bit dirty, tiny bit rusty. And what I'll do in that case, I'll just take a couple dabs of the 3-in-1 oil on there, and then I'll take probably my fine steel wool, and I'll just rub that a bit. And that's pretty good improvement on there. And that's good enough if it's just a very light rust or some soil on there. Now on the loppers, there's actually kind of three surfaces involved in most of these pruners or loppers. This the bottom lip here is usually flat and squared off, and you don't need to worry too much about that, but it does need to be pretty squared off. That helps the cutting of the blade part. If it's kind of gotten nicked and damaged and is not real square on the edge here where the blade slides against it, what you want to do is take either the round file or the half round, and you really just want to kind of keep it as flat as you can and just slide that straight across there. And you want to try and keep that edge nice and flat and sharpen the corner just a little bit. You'll have to deal with the rafters, I think, here. So if you can see, and you can see I'm starting to expose some of the metal there. It's a little bit lighter colored where it's rubbed off a little bit. And really, it's kind of cleaned up the edge there. If it's really bad, you can get the whole thing. But really just clean up that edge a little bit so it's a nice, flat cutting edge. This one doesn't need a lot of work, but you can take some more time on that. And then the other part, there's the rounded edge of the blade, and then on the back there's a flat side. You don't need to sharpen this too much. So what you do here is you would take one of these other tools. Um, yeah, this one might be easier to see with. Well, it's a little large. Um, I don't know if you can see on there. There's kind of an angle to that cutting edge that's a little bit angled a little bit differently from the rest of the blade. And what you want to do is take your sharpening tool and really kind of match that angle. If it's too cute like this, or if it's closer to a 90-degree angle, you're just going to round off your edge and it's not going to be cutting. If it's too flat, the angle's too low, you're not going to get enough of a cutting edge. So really just try and kind of mimic what's there. And since this one's not too dull, I'm just going to take the fine side and just really try and match that angle. And you can do this dry or put some of the 3-in-1 oil on there first. And you really just want to go down in strokes. If it's really dull, I would take probably the round file, and you can really go back and forth. And that's really just to wear it down to get more of a flat surface. You don't want to do that too much. But if you've got any, like, maybe you cut something with a wire or something you got caught in there and it nicked up the blade, you can work those nicks out and smooth them out. But then just keep flat strokes like this. And let's see, under a better light here, I'm going to turn this light back on. And as you're matching that angle, you'll see the oxidized part of the metal kind of wear off as you're working that a little bit. I had worked on this one a little bit already, and you can kind of see the edge there is a little shinier now. And that's really oh, I forgot the back part. That flat back side. After you've been sharpening the cutting side, the back could have some burrs on that. So what I would do is just take the fine blade, the fine side of a sharpening tool, or even just some of that steel wool, and just kind of do a couple strokes just down that flat side. You don't have to worry about angles. You're just trying to make sure that any metal burrs are gone. And then, yeah, you can always take the fine steel wool again. And once you've finished any cleaning and sharpening and rust removal, I would take a little bit of, of the 3-in-1 oil, and I put it in any of the gear areas, the hinged areas, anything along the blade, and then especially on that blade we just sharpened, I would just work that steel wool a little bit just to clean it. And then on that side too. And then if you don't want it on your fingers, you can use some gloves or a towel, but I usually just take the oil, let me get a little more on there, and then just make sure every surface is just lightly oiled. Especially any surfaces that you exposed metal on, because those, if they don't get oiled, they will rust very quickly. Gonna work that in a little bit, and then I would take another rag and just wipe off any extra oil sitting on top, so it just looks kind of, freshly cleaned and oiled. And you'll notice some of them, if they're really dirty, you'll notice a big difference once it works into the hinges because they'll be nice and smooth. And I think that's the gist of it. There were a couple other ones that I soaked in the salt and vinegar solution. These are a Corona little hand lopper. Um, these wouldn't even open all the way. Like if I squeezed them closed, they wouldn't open because they had so much rust in there. The only thing you'll notice is some of these, if they have a plating on them, like a chrome or nickel plating to make it look shinier, if you do soak it in that salt and vinegar solution, you kind of
Mhm.
see how it's kind of wrecked that coating a little bit, which doesn't affect the functionality, but it will affect the appearance somewhat. But yeah, it's that's pretty huge for me learning about that derusting process because there in the past there were times where I forgot my tools and I was like, well, I just need to get a new tool now. But you don't have to. So a little longer than I was hoping. Any questions on that?
Yeah, that diamond tape or the that cone-shaped sharpening tool,
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
I looked it up and it may be it's a diamond tapered file. What do you call it? How'd you get it? Order it.
I don't know if you can see the label on there. This one's also a Barnell.
Barnell B Sharp XL. B
Yeah.
Sharp.
Yeah. The other ones, this small one is a Barnell also. It's got a fine and a coarse side on it.
Okay, that's great.
This one's a Botco. The interesting thing on this one, it's got these little wings on the side, and they're kind of angled. And if you hold those up against, let's see if I can show you. If you hold them up against the cutting side of your tool and get the angle to match what it has right there to the blade, that's kind of preset to have the correct angle on it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Okay, I discovered something this year that I never heard about. Have you ever heard of a rust eraser?
I've heard of them. I haven't tried using them.
Oh my goodness, it's a game changer. It's amazing. It's like using eraser on pencil. I mean, it can't, like, those cleanup jobs on the back of yours and some of the nooks and crannies, that really cleans it up quick and easy. I think if it was really dirty, you would have to soak it, like you said, but the rust eraser works pretty well.
Yeah, I was looking at some of these other questions. Yeah, that's an Irwin pulse I grabbed. Um, yeah, and that I saw somebody asked about the orange tool. That's the same thing. It I would just It's got the little angles, and you can use it for light sharpenings. And I saw somebody had asked if you sharpen your tools every time, use them, or just when dull. I would give all of them a more in-depth cleaning and sharpening, either in the late fall or right now, because you don't have a lot of other things to do for the garden. But throughout the year, if you have a day where you do some decent amount of pruning and cutting, I would just use one of these hand tools and just give them a light, 4 or 5 strokes along the blade at the right angle, um, just to keep them pretty sharp throughout the year.
Thanks, David.
Yeah,
That was great. You know that everybody's kind of nervous about sharpening tools, and it's not that hard once you get going.
yeah. There's a few good videos that um, on tool sharpening. Which one was it? I don't know if any of you watched the Garden Answers videos. She has a good tool cleaning video, and then Epic Gardening actually has a really good video that covers the tool cleaning, and they go over the baking soda and the white vinegar cleaning.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, brief commercial break, very brief. This is what's coming up. Can you all see this? Yes, you can. Okay. This is what's coming up. We've got apps for the garden, planning your seed starting schedule. We've got 2 grape care and pruning classes, one on Zoom here and the other one in person, and on how to take care of your roses in spring. And this is what we did this past year. We were very busy. This is our brag sheet. It's also up on our website if you want to take a closer look at it. We have a raised bed program. We are currently taking applications. This is also on our website. You have to live in Collins County and meet some income guidelines, so take a look at that. Our website, you can also take a picture of the screen or use your phone to do the QR code, but it's college.mastergardenerfoundation.org, and you'll find all this stuff here, including our resources. We've got all the old playlists, a lot of slides from our previous talks. Our plant sale's coming up on May 9th, so put that on your calendar. And I'd like you to, if you can, take a minute and take this survey so that we know how we're helping you. And I'm going to stop sharing. And Gary, you're up.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that then? Am I good, Alice?
Yes.
Okay. So pruning fruit trees.
Here.
One of my favorite talks. I think most of you know who I am and how to get a hold of me. Gary F at wsu.edu is my email address if you have questions. We'd be happy to send you a copy of this presentation if you feel inclined that you would want to have it. Why do we prune? Usually I like to do this in person and people will give me all these reasons, but yeah, this time of the year, there's a really good reason for pruning. Take a look at your trees. And if we look at the leaves on that thing, you can see the leaves are dying. Your trees are going to tell you they're in trouble. They're having problems. They're dropping leaves, things like that. Take a look and see. Problems don't happen all at fast. Trees don't just die. They tend to struggle for a while. And so if you have a problem tree or a problem branch, you need to get rid of it. Yeah, this one hasn't been touched in a long time. It's just having a bad hair day. And we'll talk about what the heck am I going to do with this thing. Branches on roofs, especially if it's your neighbor's tree, can be kind of unwelcome. They drop all those leaves into your gutters, start to pile stuff up, moss becomes a problem. And again, then you start to worry about dropping branches during bad weather. Bad weather causes branches like this to be broken, and of course that allows bugs and different things into that tree, and helps just promote the demise of that tree. And you can see here what happened when we have a tree start to go out. When I've had people where they've called me out and I've looked at a tree like this. This tree is done. It's on its way out. It's dying. You can see the bark peeling, and it's struggling. And I've seen trees like this struggle for a couple of years, and people go, "But it's giving good fruit." Well, if it's not going to fall on anything, if it's out in the middle of the field, that's fine. But there's nothing you can do to save it. It's finished. And again, look at the inside of that tree. You can see that black part. This tree has been compromised for a while, and it's finally the weather has got the best of it. So if we start to see trees, we prune them because we try and eliminate the branches, but also we prune them for safety and reason like this. And then you get those few people that really like to they've got just way too much time on their hands and do some fun things with trees in terms of pruning them and playing with them. So we prune to reduce or maintain the tree size. If you've got to stand on the top of your ladder to pick that last apple, you're in the wrong place. Keep your tree small. There's no reason to do that. Damaged and diseased branches, they need to go right away. Pruning invigorates that tree and it'll be new growth. When you prune, you go, "Wow, I did a great job." You come back next year and you go, "Geez, it doesn't look like I even touched it." And so it really does invigorate that tree to prune. To shape a tree, to make it kind of look like what you want to do. And we'll talk about why. And then to improve the air circulation. When we look at trees that have a lot of fungal problems, a lot of that is because that tree is so dense. It doesn't allow the air movement, and especially the middle of that tree. We really want to be able to have that air circulation through that tree. And so we're pruning branches so it's not quite so thick. Pruning tools. And we already went through these. David did such an outstanding job of talking about the resources and how what you should do with your tools. I wouldn't even begin to beat on that. I do want to talk about one thing. Is we talked about the difference between anvil and bypass. Anvil is a flat surface where that blade comes down on it, and the bypass is where that blade bypasses it. All the examples David showed you were bypass. You don't want to get an anvil. As they get a little bit dough, what it tends to do is crush the branch. And so instead of a nice clean slice, it just splinters it. And again, we want something that's not going to encourage bugs and things like that to come in. So if this is how you're pruning your tree, no, you just don't want to do that. Don't even consider that. 20-year-olds will do stuff like this and everything like that. But I've had more friends fall small distances and really hurt themselves badly to the point where they were hospitalized. You've got to get a ladder and get a good ladder. You see the tree orchards ones where they have like this, where they have the one stick, any kind of good ladder, and make sure that you're on top of it and you're not going to stand on the top of it. So what do we prune? When I'm mowing the grass and anything hits me in the face, it's committed suicide. The branch is gone. So branches that are hanging down that are a problem, or for convenience or whatever. And so we're going to get rid of those. Weak limbs that they don't really have a lot of strength to them. Because what's going to happen is if they bear a lot of fruit, they're going to get to the point where it's just going to break that branch anyway and cause a problem. Dead, diseased, broken branches, and those we want to prune right away. So if you get something that's dead, diseased, broken, we want to be able to prune it in that. We want anything that's vegetative that's going straight up. It looks like a lot. Why would we be pruning so many of those? They're not going to give you any fruit. They're not going to have anything on them. And so those are just kind of water suckers. And it's amazing how fast, how tall, and how many of them will be on your tree. So anything going straight up needs to be gone. Anything going down. So if you have, typically you have branches that come out and they're going to be level with or parallel to the ground. Anything that's going down, the problem is it starts to get weak because again, when we get fruit on it, it's going to stress that and even pull that branch further. And pretty soon it's going to break. And that's going to be a problem. We don't want to compromise those openings going into the tree. Any crossing branches. So when you get two branches that cross like this, what happens when the wind comes up? They're moving. You know, they're rubbing sticks together and trying to create a fire. Not that that's going to happen, but they're going to rub the bark off. So pick one or the other and take one of those and prune one of those branches away. You know, we think about, oh God, more branches mean more fruit. You don't want maximum fruit because the apples get really small. They're not really healthy. You don't really have a healthy tree. You're going to get enough fruit off of it. You're still pruning your tree correctly and been doing it over time. So anything that goes up, anything that goes down, anything that crosses, up, down, crossing, that's what you prune. So we see this one here, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you know, you see some broken limbs. We see this branch right here going straight up. No, we don't want to take, you know, that one would come off. The broken ones would come off. And you know, it's just a pretty busy tree here. And so there's some things we could do with that. We see this one that's a little bit taller, and you can see where they've taken the two branches going up. Now, knowing this tree, it's going to want to have a central leader. So it's going to continue to try and have one branch go up. Unfortunately, it's divided out, but taking those off will get that tree a little bit smaller and be more manageable. And you can see here, we've got a real busy tree and what they did, you know, this almost reminds me of a pear tree where they've come down and taken those down, taken a lot of that growth off. Um, and so we think about the 1/3 rule. These are trees where, you know, our parks department, or I shouldn't say that, but public works department for the county, and it wasn't this county, I won't put that on them, came through and give them a haircut, just flat topped them. And we look at the 1/3 rule. Well, what does that mean? Well, you shouldn't typically take more than 1/3 of the branches. What happens when you do? That tree goes, man, I'm in trouble. I'm dying. I'm going to put out more branches. And so you come back the next year, you've got 3 times as many branches, and it's pretty ugly looking. And you can see the branches aren't growing on the lower levels, they're going up. And most of those are going to have to, again, be removed. You're going to get in a catch-22 where you keep trying to cut those off and they keep coming back with a vengeance. So we really want to think about shaping that tree and working with it. And then every once in a while, we get that big old tree. I mean, isn't this a magnificent looking tree? Look at that. It's gorgeous. Out in the middle of the field, it's beautiful. You know, and there's no way I'm going to be able to prune something like this. I don't have a ladder tall enough, and it'd be dangerous if I did. What am I going to do with this thing? Well, I'll give you 3 options. This is not one of them. We're not going to stand on the top of that ladder and try to prune this thing. So option number 1 is really not an option. Then there's option number 2, you know, we're just going to take that thing right down to the ground. We're not going to have a safety problem. And I'm not preaching for option 2, but, you know, make a nice planter out of it. And that's a possibility. But option 3 is my favorite option. Just let it go. Sit underneath it during the spring, read a book, enjoy the tree. Just let it happen. And it will take care of itself. Yes, it's going to be a mess of branches and this and that. But that's okay. But unless you've got somebody that has the ability to come in and just deal with this huge tree, it's not something you're going to want to do. And another reason for pruning, keeping your trees manageable, not letting them get too big, too tall, to the point where you go, I've really lost control of it, because you don't want to hurt yourself trying to put it down. When do we prune? You know, is there a time of the year we shouldn't be pruning? Most of us, spring is probably the one time I start to get concerned about pruning. So we've got all these flowers coming on at the time where, you know, it's putting buds on and everything like this. And as we start pruning during this time and soon after that, the sap is really flowing in this tree. And if you were to make a cut, it's almost like that tree is going to bleed a little bit. that's going to attract the bugs. That's what we don't want. We don't want something that's going to bring these bugs in, because even if the bugs don't affect that tree, they can bring diseases, things that they will infect that tree with. So spring's probably, again, when they've got these buds and blossoms, the time we want to let it go. Then we've got the fruit on and everything. It's really hard to cut branches at this time. This is a time during the summer, if you really feel the need to, where you might make a few major cuts. If you feel like this branch is the problem, this branch, this tree here looks pretty good. Don't see too many problems with it, but it may be that you can do some cutting. The nice thing about cutting in the summer is it doesn't tend to promote more growth in the tree later on. So as we cut now, we don't get that extra growth that we would during other times of the year. Downside of it is you really can't see what the heck you're cutting. And you lop into one of the branches and go, oh, I didn't mean to cut that one after all, when you pull it down and you got 5 more that come with it. So, that's a difficulty. Then we have fall. You start to see the branches. You can certainly prune in the fall and in the winter. And fortunately, we don't see a lot of snow like this. So most of us are pruning in that January, February time. You can see the whole tree. It really lays itself out. And it makes it pretty easy to come around and see it. So most of us are winter pruners. I'm not going to go out there when it's raining, but otherwise, yeah, I'm going to try and get this thing before we start seeing that bud growth and everything like that, and work on it that way. We want to make sure our cuts as close to the parent stems as possible. That's really what helps that wound. And so when we talk about those blades, we want the blade as close to the tree as possible, not the reverse. And that bypass, that single one that had the flat side to it, you would prefer to have that on the outside of your cut. So when we start looking at the cut, okay, so we call it the collar that's coming off the tree, and we can see that cut. And if we look, the tree has this ability to heal itself. See how that bark has come around and come in? And in fact, it was going by for those of you that you understand this, the lake, and there's this huge hole in the tree, and it's been there for a long time. And the tree was trying to heal that, and had been working on it for probably 5 or 6 years, and really had done a fairly good job of trying to fix this hole. So we see here where the tree has done a really nice job of doing that. So don't leave the stubs. What happens is the stubs don't heal, and that becomes a problem. We want to make sure that we get as close to the tree as possible. This one's a little bit too far. And again, you see that I'm cutting, using the cutters, I'm cutting the wrong side. The blade should have been on the inside, not the outside, or on the inside of the tree, not the outside like it has here. I'm also leaving a little bit too much branch. Now, sometimes, it's really hard to get your hand and manipulate it to where you want to be. And you've got this big old branch. So you make your first cut and you come back and make your second cut. That's understandable. But again, not something hanging out there. So what am I talking about here? Look at this branch here. We look at this one, look at how far it's sticking out. And as I look at that, the tree just doesn't have that ability to cover it. And so look at this here, the cut was made, but it was too far away from the tree. And the tree has tried to kind of heal it, but we all have that branch there that's died. But look at the opens and the cracks and things like that. And we see from the bark, something doesn't look right. This tree is starting to deteriorate. It's starting to have problems. And we're losing this tree. Part of it is because of this one cut. And I would dare say this probably is that disease is going to go to the middle of the tree. And what trees tend to do is they tend to rot from the middle out. You'll see that when trees, they also get very brittle when they die. And that's one of the reasons why we see branches fall and snap and things like that. That tree has been on its way out for a while. And instead of kind of breaking off, it just, the weight of the wind blowing, the weight of snow, different things like that will just snap it. And that tree has been compromised for a while. but you can't see the inside of that tree to know that's happening. So if we have a large branch, what are we going to do? And that can be a problem because we get down and we're cutting, all of a sudden, zoop, the weight of the branch just strips that bark off. And that bark is the tree's major defense, if not only defense, against outside bugs and bacteria and things like that. There's nothing we can do with this wound. We're kind of stuck here. And so as I look at this, this is where's a problem. So if we're going to take a major branch, what we want to do is make 3 cuts. So our first cut is going to be maybe 6 inches away from the tree, and we're going to cut underneath. And the next cut is going to go, we're going to come all the way through, and we're going to go maybe 8 inches away. And if that tree happens to break and start to strip, that strip will go right into that first cut and it's just going to fall off. It won't break away. And then we follow up with our third cut, which is where we wanted it to be, fairly close to that tree. But at that point, with just that 6 inches of wood, there's not going to be the pressure there. We're not going to get that damage like we did before. So cut up. This one shows it going almost to the middle. You don't really need to go quite that far, just enough to make sure that we're not going to get that stripping. Second cut, get the weight off of that branch, and then the third cut, we'll cut the stub off. So where to start? I've given you, so you cut everything that goes up, everything that goes down, great. You know how to prune. I'll hand you your pruners and you come out to this tree and you go, where do I start? I have no idea. I'm looking at this bad hair day and I'm going, I don't even know where to start. What I usually tell people is prune what you know needs to come off. Anything that's broken, and especially the ones going up, they're really easy. So you start to walk around the tree and prune what you know. So you're walking around the tree and you're pruning everything going up. Then you take it and just stay on the ground. You don't even need to get on the ladder to do this. Prune the stuff that's going up. Prune the stuff that is obvious to you needs to come off that tree. And walk around once. Okay, then walk around a second time. Once you start getting rid of branches, things become more obvious. And you can really say, oh, okay, I wasn't sure about that branch, but now I can say, yeah, I want to keep that one. Or, oh, it's obvious. It needs to go. And usually I try and take 3 walks around the tree. And by that time, I've gotten almost most of the branches off. Then I may get a ladder to deal with the upper stuff going off. But at that point, this tree has been in a pretty good shape. And we look at this one. So they've cut the branches. I don't really like the upper branches to be quite that tall. But overall, we've got the openness of the inside, so a lot of airflow. You can see, and I know somebody's going to say, wow, how is this? You've killed it. There's no fruit. It's going to start shooting those branches out. And before you know it, this thing's going to be green. There's going to be more branches coming out, and it's going to start putting on fruit. So, this one looks fairly, really well done as far as a pruning job. And you can see the others have kind of followed suit. So remember, walk up. We're going to take the dead and diseased branches. Those are obvious. And you can take those at any time. The sooner, the better. If you've got branches that are broken, the kids are outside playing, somebody hits a branch and it's broken and hanging there, go out there, take it off. Don't leave that splintered end on there. When you do decide to prune anything up, down, and crossing. And what we really want to do is we want to shape it like a Christmas tree. What we don't want is this round feeling. We see these big old trees that are round and we go, wow. Well, for something that's 40 feet in the sky and everything, that's great. But we want the lower branches, and you'll see them come out. You want them to go out the furthest. Then you get the next tier. You want them to come out just a little bit further, and the top tier. And that allows those lower branches to get light. When you make it round, the lower branches don't get as much light. But the Christmas tree shape tends to allow each branch to get a certain amount of light as it goes through. And again, the middle needs to stay fairly clear, fairly open to branches to allow that airflow through. Branches are like hair, they're going to grow back. I've had people go, oh my gosh, I'm agonizing. What if I cut the wrong branch? It'll grow back. Don't get too caught up in that. I mean, if you're cutting 3 inch and 4 inch around branches, yeah, that's going to be a little bit. But if you're cutting these branches that are less diameter than your thumb, those things are going to grow back. And so don't worry about, oh my gosh, I might have made a mistake, or, I agonized this. I remember my first time I took this class and I was pruning trees. My backyard, I had 10 fruit trees. I thought I better know. So I went and took extension class, just like some of you are doing, and figured out how to do this. And over 20 years of pruning trees and everything and pruning other people's trees, I've kind of got my own style, but I tend to feel more confident. But again, it'll grow back. Don't agonize over the fact that, man, I cut this branch and the tree's going to die. No, the tree's not going to die. David made a great point, and I can't tell you much that one of the things that I learned through others is carry a file with you. So when I'm using the loppers, and I use loppers for probably 99% of my cuts, the little hand tools are great, but mostly it's just loppers. They take care of everything that I got. If I need something that big, then I've been ignoring the tree for a long time, and I'll have to come in with another blade. But as you're cutting, you get at that fifth or sixth tree, and pretty soon, wow, it's really hard to cut that branch. And you really start to feel it in your shoulders and everything like that. Man, taking that file out and running it across about 3 or 4 times makes a world of difference. And all of a sudden, and plus I'm not getting that splintering. When I'm cutting a branch and it's really having difficulty, again, it tends to splinter the end of that, and opens it up for bacteria and things like that. So a cheap file, lots of these places are going to have a nice $5 file, something small that you can stick in your pocket. And again, just a little bit of work and it's done. If you have a problem tree, something that's got a little disease in it, and you go, yeah, but the fruit is so good, I just don't want to lose this tree. Well, yeah, it's on its way out, but I'm still going to keep it for a while. If you have a tree that's really got a lot of disease in it, you want to disinfect your tools between each one. One of the things I like to do is I like to leave that for my last tree to prune. I don't want to take that from tree to tree to tree and affect other things. And the baby wipes work really good for me. When you had small kids, there was always baby wipes all over the house. A couple of those, wipe it off between trees, which just was for me a good idea. And I was off and running again. So that was something that helped clean that up, and it just kept my things in a little bit working order when I went from tree to tree. Do not paint your trees. I remember that was a big thing. Extension a long time ago, and you'd be driving down the road and you see this tree with a big white spot on it here and there. We don't see that anymore. Well, there's a reason for that. Don't paint your trees. That's really not going to help. It's really not going to make a difference. It's not healthy for the tree. So no, we're not going to do that. If you're pruning the right way, if you're cutting those branches close to the tree like you should, the tree will take care of itself and remain healthy. Train and make that tree look like you want it to be. It can take time, but it's you don't have to. And the other thing is, if you're agonizing over 2 branches and you're going, I don't know which one to take, leave them both. You don't have to prune a branch. Come back next year and see what happens. Sometimes you need to give it a little bit of time. So as much as I've been talking about, we need to prune this, we need to cut this, if you don't really feel strong about pruning it, leaving a couple extra branches isn't going to hurt anything. Again, leave the branches, come back next year and go, oh yeah, this is my problem branch. Or, oh wow, I'm sure glad I left that one. It filled in really nicely. So you don't have to prune things that are coming out and you have a question about. Take a look and see how you want it to have. These are the guides that I use. Training and Pruning Your Home Orchard, PMW 400, Oregon State University. Great publication. And really summarizes a lot of the stuff that I talked about. So if you're looking for a reference, and you can pick this guide up online, it's there. So with that,